Hello, everyone, and welcome to the stream today. Uh, Let me just take a look here. I'm just getting myself set up and oriented a bit here, so just bear with me. A very exciting day, lots of news and the like to talk about. I'm quite excited. I hope everyone's doing well. I'll be starting at about 5 past as usual, so I'm just going to wait a few minutes for people to come online and join the stream. In the meantime, I'm going to share the link here to the next stream so you can set a reminder for that one. And let me see here. I'm going to add it to the description of this video as well. Cool. People coming online. Hey everyone, how's it going? So today should be an interesting day. I've got a couple kind of interesting news items, I think, that will be interesting to discuss. I've also got some mail, so I can open that up on stream and see what that is, what that has inside, and yeah, it should be pretty good. Again, just waiting until about 5 past before I start, properly talking, at least about anything transit related. Just looking at the chat here. Hey everyone, I'm doing well today. Very tired. Lots of video work. Pretty nice day in Ontario today. Hope it is nice wherever you guys are watching from. Ooh. Need to just make an adjustment here to the stream. Taking a look here. Have you considered that you might want more screens? Well, I think I have one monitor, and I think one monitor is enough for me at the moment. Just trying to check. I seem to be having a resolution issue here, so I'm just making sure that's all good. Okay, folks, I'm just trying to sort this technical issue out, and then I'll get started. It's a little annoying. How does everyone's stream quality look? Just making sure that the resolution is set properly. Decent, good, okay. Looks like it's all pretty good. So I will go ahead, despite the fact that YouTube is screaming at me to put on the brakes. So let's get into it. So I've got a bit to talk about today. A bit of, I guess maybe I can do some Q&A. I've got some mail. I've got some news items. So I'm going to start on the mail today. I'm quite curious to see what I received. It's from... I want to say this is a Mark. It's an M name. I'm sorry, the handwriting is a little messy. It's from Illinois, so it appears to be some CTA maps. So this is pretty cool. I'll try to open this up. Oh, this is quite cool. Yeah, this can probably go on my wall or something along those lines. It's a CTA map, so the Chicago L and the like. Yeah, this is quite cool to see. I want to spend some time in Chicago and film some videos there. I haven't for the channel at this point. So when the whole health situation is subsided, it's definitely a place I want to travel to. Because we haven't traveled in so long, and it's definitely something that we want to do when we can, as soon as we can, because that was something we did a lot earlier on in the channel. Like we went to Montreal, we went to Ottawa, and so we're definitely very excited to be able to travel again whenever that is possible. I should open up the next item here. I'm assuming this is also Illinois related. So it is Michael, and yeah, there is quite a few different maps and schedules here as well, which is very cool, including a Ventra card. So that's quite awesome. Thank you so much, Michael, as well as a Smart Trip card from Washington, D.C. So if anyone has a unique transit card or anything of that sort, please consider sending it to us so we can open it up on stream next time. I'm going to send the link we have to our Google form, where if you have stuff, you can submit it to us and mail it in. So that is now in the chat, and I believe it is also in the video description, though I will have to check that. So give me 1 second here. Yeah, it's in the video description as well. So since there seems to be a lot of chat going on, if you're interested in talking more with other people on the channel and the like, please consider joining the community Discord server. There are links in all of the video descriptions, essentially, as well as following me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @rm_transit, and I tweet a lot about transit and at cities and related topics, and so it's always great to have more people on there. Let's see. So to get into the first news item I want to talk about today, and then I'll do some question and answer stuff and the like, and then we can just go into like open discussion of transit and stuff. Someone shared on the Discord server, so again, this is one of the reasons you should consider joining on Discord. This piece of news, which is just a document that is about the kind of shortlisted train manufacturers for for the Edmonton Valley Line West light rail project. And what's really interesting here is that Bombardier is not one of them, which is a little upsetting because Bombardier did the trains for the eastern portion of the line. The Flexities are being used, the same trains that are being used on the Eglinton Crosstown in Toronto and the Waterloo Ion LRT, which is pretty. They're 7 segments long instead of 5 segments long, but they look nice. And they're not shortlisted for the main light rail rolling stock package for the other portion of the line. So the potential bidders are CAF, so the Spanish rolling stock manufacturer, Hyundai Rotem, which is from Korea, and Siemens, which is obviously from Germany but has a major manufacturing presence in North America in California. I think it's really interesting to see this happen. Some people have suggested, or at least the discussion going on in the Discord server, was that maybe this is related to the fact that, well, Bombardier is now part of Alstom, and maybe Alstom didn't want to bid. I'm sure they did bid because it's mentioned that there are 8, I think, submissions that were provided, and so I'm sure one of them would have been Alstom, and maybe even Bombardier was one of them. But it's very interesting that neither of those companies got through because usually you want to have as unified a fleet as you can, and usually it would be kind of a shoe-in to win more train deliveries. I kind of wonder if it's related to late delivery of vehicles, because I don't recall completely, but I think it might have been the case that Edmonton got some of their trains late, or they may have had some issues. Like, I know they haven't heavily tested them yet, but I do feel like I recall some issues potentially having come up. I'm just gonna do something here. But yeah, I just thought that was so interesting. The Valley Line West is quite an interesting project. I comment a lot about the fact that currently the Edmonton LRT does not go to the west of the city, and so the famous West Edmonton Mall, which was previously the largest mall in North America, was not connected by rail, and so I think it's very interesting. This project on the whole is quite cool, and it's cool to see Edmonton will have light rail kind of radiating in all directions in the coming years because of this project, and so yeah, it's quite exciting. I think that as I talked about in my Edmonton LRT Demystified video for the Valley Line, I think Edmonton is starting to kind of catch up and maybe surpass Calgary in terms of LRT development, and so it's quite exciting. And but it is interesting that Bombardier is not one of the preferred bidders. So I'm going to go into some Q&A because I think some people have sent some messages, and so I'll respond to some of these. So let's see. Okay, I'm going to start with this one. So if SkyTrain were to build another line, where in Vancouver would I put it? I think the most convincing corridors are Arbutus, 41st Avenue, Hastings Street. I think there's a really strong argument for Hastings Street, but I'm not sure we really need another east-west corridor at the moment because we do have Millennium and Expo. And so maybe Arbutus actually does make sense, and maybe it can be light rail because that's kind of always been the plan with Arbutus because it is an old rail corridor and it could seemingly be used for light rail. Though I am of the belief that it should probably still be SkyTrain because, as we know, the Canada Line is really heavily used, and I think that building another north-south SkyTrain line is a long-term priority. And, well, with elevated lines, you can still build them in an existing rail right-of-way, and it will be much easier. So it's still a really good opportunity to build north-south rail in Vancouver. And I think that, we're not going to get this kind of opportunity that this rail corridor offers again. And so using it for a north-south high-capacity line even if it's Arbutus and we don't think it's that high of a demand corridor. I think just because, as we've seen with the Canada line, there is significant north-south demand, it's valuable to create a high-quality north-south SkyTrain corridor in Vancouver. And so there's that. There is the potential North Shore SkyTrain link under the Burrard Inlet, or maybe over the Burrard Inlet if a bridge is used. I think that's another very interesting proposition. So that's what I would say. Stream quality is looking good. Good to hear from everyone. Have you ever heard of the CTA Red and Purple Line modernization project? What do you think about it? Yeah, I've heard about it, and it's definitely something we've discussed on the Discord server, so again, consider joining. It's good. I think that I am a little disappointed that a project like it is necessary. I think that it's a case where it would have been good to see more continuous upgrades of the system. And I think that that's something that we need to consider for other systems. For example, there will be a day when the Vancouver SkyTrain viaducts on like the Expo line need to be replaced. And I think it would be far better for us to do a continuous replacement program over like 20 years. Let's say, I don't know, in a couple decades from now, when we need to start replacing those viaducts, maybe making them a bit more seismically resistant as well. I think it would be far better to do them piecemeal over a long period of time than do what Chicago's doing, because I feel like Chicago's approach is because so much waiting has been done and the corridor is not in great shape. I think it would be far better to be a bit more proactive and less disruptive and just replace these elevated rail viaducts piece by piece rather than having to do it all as one giant project. So that's my thinking on that. How much water do you think you'll drink on the stream? It's a good question. I couldn't tell you. And just if anyone's new, I do try to go through questions and I'll answer a bunch and then I'll go to another news item and then I'll answer a bunch more. I opened up some news already. If you have any... opened up news. I opened up some mail already. If you have any mail to send me or there's something you'd like me to open on stream next time, go to the link in the description and fill out the info. Always happy to open like rail maps and the sort, fare cards, etc. from places all around the world. And the usual, consider following us on Instagram and Twitter and supporting us on Patreon. It's all much appreciated. But I'm going to continue along. So, thoughts on the new Piccadilly line trains? Are they better than the Azures? Well, that's a very hard question to answer because we've got like 3 renders, I think, at the moment. London is getting new Piccadilly line trains from Siemens, which are supposed to be air conditioned, but there was some discussion I saw on Twitter, which was quite interesting, that was along the lines of, I think Siemens said that they're supposed to release far less heat, use far less energy, and all this stuff, and it just it kind of seems to break the laws of thermodynamics, because how can the trains have air conditioning and yet release less heat, and also they have to use all the extra power of air conditioning and yet still, again, less power and less heat? It seems strange. I think the Piccadilly line trains, like in the renderings, they look nice. I like the large display screens that are kind of where the ads would traditionally be. I think that's something that you're starting to see a trend towards. I believe at least one of the R211 prototypes had those, and so it would be cool to see those more broadly. They look good, but the problem is that the deep level tube trains are just so constrained by loading gauge that they can't look that good, right? Like I don't think they look very good. I don't like the tube train look. Maybe that's sacrilege. I do like the subsurface line trains, the S series, or I believe they're called S stock. Sorry, I like them a lot, but the deep level tube trains, I don't think I've ever really thought they looked great. And this kind of continues the trend. But yeah, no, they look like they'll be a serious improvement, and I think air conditioning is kind of a basic amenity these days, and so it's good to see that they seem to have figured out how to do it. Why do you not like the Eglinton line if it has traffic if it has traffic light priority, it will be like the Köln-Stadtbahn. I don't really agree. The issue is that Toronto is a city region. See, it's a region really, not a city. It's a region of like 7 million people. I think that having this kind of light rail in for our second east-west line doesn't make sense. I think we could have gone with a full subway, or at least a Shepherd level 4-car subway train line. Or something like the REM, if we're talking about a more modern train design that would be more flexible, that you could go elevated easier with and such. I just think that makes more sense. That's all I have to really say. I'm making a video about this tomorrow, about light rail in general and my thoughts on it, because I don't hate light rail. Like, I have a lot of places where I think light rail makes sense. I just don't think that place is Eglinton Avenue in Toronto. So that's kind of my thinking on that. Number of features directly correlates with quality of train. Yeah, I think that's roughly how it works. When do you think actual construction and tunnel boring will officially begin on the Eglinton West and Scarborough subway extensions? Well, the official word, and I think in the media releases and stuff from Metrolinx, has been that work is supposed to go on sometime, I think, this year, so quite soon, which is super exciting for sure. Yes, Simon is looking forward to seeing some stuff. So Simon from the UK sent me some awesome stuff, some, let's say, rail memorabilia, and so I'll be opening that on the next stream. Again, next stream is in 2 weeks, so if you haven't already, go bookmark it. It's in the description of the video, and you should be able to set a reminder for the next stream. How old were you when you first used transit? I have no idea. Probably like 4 or 5, younger. I wasn't there when I was there, but I wasn't conscious when I was a young child. I'm sure I rode transit as a baby at some point. Do CAF do any good trams? Yeah, they do the Urbos models. A bunch of the systems in Australia have used CAF trams. I think Canberra and Newcastle have used CAF trams, and they look pretty good. I think the Purple Line in Maryland is going to be using CAF trams. I think KC Streetcar uses a CAF streetcar. So, yeah, CAF has quite a bit of tram manufacturing in North America already. They seem to be pretty good. Why is ETS choosing a different train manufacturer? I'm not sure, but it is an interesting question to ask. They would have to have a pretty serious reason to want to do that. So there's the chance, right? The first chance is that Bombardier didn't bid or Alstom didn't bid, which seems unlikely given that 8 companies bid. And, so CAF, Hyundai, Siemens, right? You've got Kinki Shario, so the company that manufactures the LA and Seattle cars. Who else? CRRC, right? So that's 5. Statler, 6, right? Who else could potentially have bid out of those 8 companies, right? I'm struggling to think of other manufacturers. Give me a second. Yeah, I think how do you get 8 companies and not include them? I guess maybe 2. I know CRC has kind of like multiple branches, so maybe multiple branches of CRC bid separately. But yeah, I'm not sure. Why are the TTC subway trains moving more slowly compared to Montreal and Wamata? I'm not sure what you're referring to, so maybe if you want to clarify your question, I can answer it. Someone's saying that there were some minor delays in Edmonton, and in that case, I guess that would kind of make sense. All 26 LRVs are there, though, yes. They moved faster in the past, but the policy was to reduce speed to cut maintenance costs. I'm not sure if you're referring to the actual subway trains in service. If we electrify freight railroads across America, what engines would work? I don't think we really have an electric freight engine in North America, right? We don't. So I think that the probably some European models would be good candidates, but I'm sure because of the fact that we do freight differently than Europe, we would get custom models that are different than anything that is out there right now. If you want to see some heavy electric freight locomotives, I recommend looking at what China, India, Russia use. Some of them have some pretty heavy electrified freight locomotives, and so that's worth looking into. Bombardier is now represented by Alstom. Yep. What do you think of the Edmonton bus network redesign? I think it's quite common sense. There's a lot of those sort of bus network redesigns going on across North America. And so I think that it's good. Yeah, like moving to gridded networks and more frequent service on fewer corridors is probably a good policy generally. So I am going to talk about a new item here. So I'm going to talk about another news item, and then I'll come back to Q&A type stuff. I don't know. I think I ate something in my stomach. It's been a little upset all day today. But the news item here is that Ottawa has announced a fund to electrify public transit buses, which I think is very interesting. So currently in Canada, we have electric bus trials in major urban areas going on in Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Vancouver, Edmonton. I don't think Calgary has trialed electric buses, which maybe is not so surprising given that it's Calgary. But of course, several suburbs of Toronto as well when I refer to Toronto. Vancouver has recently placed a fairly large order. When I say fairly large, it's double digits, low double digits, but a double digits order for Nova Bus electric buses to start electrifying the 100 Marpole route, which is pretty cool to see. There's also Toronto, which has ordered, currently has in service, I think, around 60 electric buses, which is pretty cool, on kind of a trial basis. So basically, Toronto ordered from 3 manufacturers and just wanted to get a sense of kind of how they would fit in the fleet, how they would operate and such, which is pretty cool to see. I'm not going to lie. They ordered from New Flyer, Proterra, and BYD. BYD has been super late with their delivery of their order, but I think it's fully delivered now. Montreal has been experimenting with a few models. Ottawa, I think, has either recently announced they're going to be testing or has already started testing electric buses. Brampton Transit and York Region Transit, and I think My Way have all kind of been in the loop with electric buses. Edmonton has a bunch of Proterra buses in full service, I think 40 or so. So it's pretty cool to see electric buses kind of really rolling out. Interestingly, it feels like faster than electric cars. I mean, it's a small portion of our fleets, but it's still a substantial portion. Like 50 out of the TTC's buses is not a small number. And 40 of the ETS's buses is a pretty significant number, right? That's approaching, 5% of their fleet. So I think that's quite exciting to see. I think that electric buses are such a great technology because they reduce pollution, air pollution and noise pollution. They're more performant than standard buses, right? Better acceleration with electric motors. They're more comfortable. There's a lot of vibration produced by diesel engines in traditional buses. They're obviously going to last a lot longer than traditional diesel buses, which last about 15 years usually. So there's so many benefits to electric buses that it makes sense to do a mass conversion to them. And I think that, for cities that don't have trolley bus networks, which is every city in Canada with short of Vancouver, electric buses are just a really good way to electrify the transit network, which is important because otherwise, if a network is based entirely on buses, there's basically no chance before battery electric buses were around that you were going to get to a zero emissions public transit system. And now that battery electric buses are being tested and such, and starting to actually roll out in service, it means that there is a lot more capability to start decarbonizing the networks. And I think that's just really exciting to see. It feels modern too, not using fossil fuels, electric infrastructure and such. I think you can get, as I mentioned, you can get better vehicles. It would be cool to see if Vancouver does kind of off-wire and on-wire trolley buses with batteries. I think that would be super awesome. 10 seconds here. A shout out to Richard Chen for the super chat. I'm just going to quickly finish my my kind of blurb on electric buses, and then I'm going to answer Richard's question. Super chat's obviously much appreciated, and I'll make sure to answer questions from them. So yeah, I'll answer this question right after I finish my blurb. But basically, I think that Vancouver has a great opportunity with on and off wire trolley bus charging, because you can use those trolley wires to basically create a much more extensive network, right? Like right now, the trolley wires they go into Burnaby, they cover a lot of Vancouver. With those existing trolley wires, you could assume that Vancouver could cover its entire network with battery electric buses that connect up to the trolley wires when they're on the main trunk routes, charge up, and then go off wire to serve other areas of the city. So in the suburbs as well, right? Like maybe some buses that go into Richmond that are on the trolley wires for much of their trip could be battery electric, and they could charge on the wires, and same with buses going into Burnaby, for example. So I think it's a really exciting opportunity. I think that given the lower long-term maintenance costs, I think that it's a really smart way of spending capital money, right? You're spending money that you have right now, capital, to reduce your costs in the future, and that's always a smart investment. And of course, I think the ultimate kind of good thing about all of this is that a lot of this manufacturing and a lot of these companies, New Flyer and Novabus, are Canadian, and so it's really cool to see that we're taking the lead and doing a lot of electrification of buses. And I think that we can lead in North America for bus electrification. I know that North American transit market is seen as not that incredible, but it's big for buses, and so it's cool if Canada can lead it for this. So I'm going to go into some more Q&A. But again, shout out to Richard Chen for the super chat, and I'm going to answer his question. So is the GO Regional Express Rail still on track to being electrified? Haven't been in the loop really on this front. So GO Regional Express Rail is kind of the previous name for what's called GO Expansion now, though I prefer the Regional Express Rail name because it's better. It's at least exciting. I don't know if it's the best name either, because it's not really representative of the type of system that GO RER, I call it GO RER. It's not representative of what's going to happen with GO. But yes, electrification is still very much on track. It is being procured. So essentially, what's called the Encore package, which stands for on corridor. So that's trains. Let me think. Trains, I think some station upgrades, operations, electrification, some other improvements of infrastructure, perhaps signaling. All of that is the Encore package, and that stuff is a lot. So it's taking a long time. I think the kind of procurement process started like 1 or 2 years ago. It's probably pretty close to being finished. I think we could probably expect to hear this year was kind of I think what Metrolinx may have said. I don't recall, but it's been out for a long time, and so I'm sure we will have, the expectation would be that we would hear pretty soon about that. There's some major bidders, there's several teams of different companies, right? So rolling stock companies, operators, construction companies, etc. Deutsche Bahn, MTR, SNCF, RATP, all these really great international operators are bidding, which is super exciting. All the major rail manufacturers, well, each of those teams has a major rail manufacturer, which is quite cool. So it is very much on track, and I think that it's just going to be delayed from when we expected. We expected, I think, 2025 for significant completion. It seems like it'll be more like 2030, which is more realistic. It's a little disappointing because electrification should and can happen very quickly, but it simply isn't. And I think that part of the problem with that is just because we're doing this kind of a little bit weird approach where we do everything at once, which may not be the best idea. I think a lot of the time when electrification happens, right, a single line at a time is electrified. And so it gives you the chance to kind of learn from that, how it would be kind of like, you have a kid and you're like, hey, maybe we should teach our kid how to ride a bike, right? And you think and you take the training wheels off the bike and you're ready to put your kid on the bike without training wheels, first time they've ever rode a bike, and then you think, no, maybe we should put them in the front seat of the car because I think the bike is a little too easy. That's kind of how it feels a bit with trying to do everything at once. I think that doing like just Lakeshore East or just Lakeshore First might have made more sense, but we've committed to this, and so at the end of the day, we're going to get electrification. I think it's just a matter of when, and I think it should be in less than a decade, which is exciting. It's not that long a transit time. So I'm going to answer some more questions here. F for Bombardier. Yep, that's how I feel. I'm slightly confused as to whether the Ontario line and Eglinton Crosstown would be fully operated by the TTC or Metrolinx, and will it have the TTC logo and wayfinding fully integrated? Well, it will have. It will be operated by the TTC, as far as I know. Eglinton definitely will. I think Ontario line will. But Ontario line will be automated, so the extent to which the TTC operates it, it's less because it doesn't have drivers. Will it have the TTC logo? Yes, Eglinton will, and I'm sure Ontario line will. But they will also have the Metrolinx logo and like the T symbol, which is the Unified Transit symbol for the GTHA, which is cool to see. I don't think it will have. I think like Metrolinx has their own wayfinding standard. I kind of talked about this with Tobin Allison in a video I did previously, an interview video. So I recommend going back and taking a look at that regarding like wayfinding and stuff and the Metrolinx projects. But I don't think it's going to have the TTC wayfinding, but it will have the TTC standards. Like it will refer to line 1 and line 2 and etc. But yeah, I think that's how that's going to work. Dry lips starting. SkyTrain to Granville Island. I think that'd be really cool. Yeah, really cool. Like it's a major destination that isn't super well connected to the transit network, the rail transit network, that is. Actually, I probably should take off my headphones. My hair is a mess, as you can probably see. I just realized I can't hear anything. Why am I wearing headphones? But SkyTrain to Granville Island would be nice. Remember, there was the streetcar, the Olympic line, as it was called previously, that served that kind of corridor between Olympic Village and Granville Island, and so that could just come back, and then that would be like a cheap way of connecting up to Granville Island. I'm a little sad that it hasn't come back because it seems like a kind of no-brainer. There's actually space to the east and west of that to extend the streetcar system, and I think it would be kind of cool. Like again, that's a place where having a streetcar actually makes sense. Like it's a super dense area. Destinations are close together, right? So it makes sense. Someone mentioned thoughts on the Gordie Howe Bridge in Windsor. I think that's the new bridge between Windsor and Detroit. I haven't followed it super closely. I believe that is right, the new bridge. It's cool, I guess. Yeah, I haven't followed it super closely because it's not really a transit project. When do you think we will receive an update on the Ontario line? Well, there was an update not that long ago, I think, right, with some updated kind of like specifications and stuff. I think there's pretty frequent updates that come out regarding various elements of the line if you just kind of check the project website. Just wanted to say construction of a new metro line and extension of another in Porto starts this week or something. 7 new stations, 5 of them being underground, making the annual ridership 20% larger. That's very exciting. Always good to hear about more rail in Portugal and Europe. What do you think about a SkyTrain line crossing the Second Narrows? I think it's kind of out of the way, so I would prefer to not go that far out of the way. North Shore seems prohibitively expensive if you build a crossing for its limited population and NIMBY. I'm sure North Vancouver has more than one NIMBY, so I don't know why the NIMBY here is singular. But it might be expensive, yeah. But I think that one important thing to consider with transit is that you do want to connect your whole region, and sometimes that means building expensive lines where the business case might be weaker. But that being said as well, North Vancouver is a really important part of Metro Vancouver, right? Like, it has all the ski hills, it has a lot of the nature and such. And I think having rail out there makes a lot of sense. And I think there's massive densification in the Lonsdale area, and I think there would be even more if you connected SkyTrain up. And so, no, I think that like it's a good investment, and I think that rail, like underground rail, is really good. It's quite resilient in case of disasters and stuff, and sea buses aren't. So, and plus sea buses probably have higher operating costs, frankly. So I think there's a lot of benefit to having that rail line. Plus an idea context to make an iconic bridge over the Douro River for another 8-station circular line. Cool to hear. That's again in Porto. What do you make of all the negative press about the REM recently? I think that with all of this negative press we've seen with the REM, I think it's just kind of the bounce back from getting something, right? Like, I feel like we love to complain about stuff in Canada broadly. Every city does this, not just Montreal. And I think it's part of why we can't have nice things, you know? Like, when we get something, we complain about it endlessly, and it's like, can we just not be happy for once? Montreal built almost no transit, like rail transit, for decades. We're building rail transit, and now people want to find anything they can complain about, possibly, right? Like, and like, I get it. I get why people would not like, even the sense that it's not public, which it isn't. It is public. Or sorry, it's public. The REM is public. But any sense that it's not, people feel uncomfortable, I think, because they've been told that transit needs to be as public as possible, and if it's not good. At the end of the day, right, like, the point of transit is to move a lot of people efficiently with low environmental impact and inexpensively, so that people get the benefit of mobility. If a system does that, I don't think it really matters who owns the system or who runs the system, right? A high quality integrated system is just as good if it's operated by a private company as if it's operated by the government, and it might even be better, right? Like, that's totally possible. I think what we should use to judge transit projects is the outputs, right? Like, is it creating good connectivity? Is it providing a high quality service? Is it decongesting the city? If it's doing all those things, then I don't think it's super important who runs it, etc. It's an important consideration, I suppose, if you had the choice. But in Montreal, is the choice there because for years and years nothing was getting built, right? So that's kind of my take on it, and I think that people will complain about anything. What do you think will be built faster, Cambridge Ion extension or the Hamilton LRT? Also, do you think LRT would be better if they planned and built them faster, or is the slow approach better? I don't really have an opinion on slow versus fast. I think that's super dependent on the location. I think the Cambridge Ion extension could possibly happen first, and that's because it's a lot easier to build an extension than a new line, because you have experience, like the region has experience with the construction process. You already have a lot of the infrastructure installed, so you're just building the tracks and some signaling and maybe some extra stabling room. And so usually extensions are easier to build. So I would say Cambridge probably. It's moving along pretty well, right? And I don't actually even know how far along Hamilton is in terms of detailed design and stuff, because I think Cambridge extension is quite far along. Someone might be able to confirm that in the chat. Man, those new tube trains have absolutely tiny windows. Yeah, the deep level tubes just do have it. I do agree that the renders from several years ago looked better. They looked very space age, and the new ones just kind of look, I don't know, they look like they've been value engineered a lot. New red and orange line trains have LCD screens next to the doors showing connecting services. Yeah, I've seen that, and that is a good feature of them. I'm not a huge fan of those trains, but I do think that is one good feature of them. So I have a comment here. London is a really fast-growing city that goes under the radar for LRT. I'm not sure what you're referring to necessarily. Maybe you can specify. What do you think of the TTC getting rid of Presto when the contract expires? I think this is the type of situation where we need better leadership in Ontario and in Toronto. I think that the whole situation with Presto is mostly on the province, but like seriously, is the TTC really going to dump Presto? And I think that, if they did, that would be a hugely big mistake. Um, I think actually having a worse system, like, here's why it's a mistake. Um, you could have a system that is seriously pretty bad. I'm not saying like Presto is not perfect, but it could be pretty bad, and the TTC should probably still keep it because having the integration probably benefits them, right? Say that you're from Mississauga and you spend time in Toronto, which a lot of people from Mississauga do. A lot of people from Mississauga and York and Durham work in Toronto. Now imagine you have a fare card and it's not like you ride in on the GO train and now you don't have the TTC fare card. Well, what's the chance like you ride the TTC then? Like, I'm sure a lot of people still would, but there would be a substantial number who'd be like, oh, I don't have the, like if it was Presto, could just tap my Presto card and get on. But if it's not Presto, maybe they're not going to ride. And so I think that they're just kind of shooting themselves in the foot. The answer to fixing the problem is just to work with Presto to make the system better. It's kind of a bad situation because obviously Presto has a lot of problems, but, again, this is like trying to put out a fire by throwing gasoline on it. So that's my thought on that whole situation. What do you think is the best case of trams and light rail being integrated into the existing urban fabric of where it goes through? That's a very good question. I think that if we're talking about like integrating it into existing urban fabric, I think Waterloo's Ion is quite good for that. I think there's a number of systems in like a number of the Parisian tramway systems are really well integrated into the urban fabric, so they're good examples. Sydney's light rail looks really good. Light rail, trams, whatever you want to call it. The Jerusalem light rail looks quite good, actually. Some people have been sharing that on Discord. A lot of light rail projects are pretty well integrated into the urban fabric. Have you heard about Colorado's Rail Commission working on passenger rail along the Front Range? Yes, I have. I feel like I'm going to sneeze, so I had to pause there. Yes, Boston's Green Line Type 9 is CAF, yes. Do you have any thoughts on fair integration between the TTC and GO? What do you think would be the best way to go about it? I think Jonathan English's report from the Toronto Regional Board of Trade is probably the best approach. It's very practical, right? Like it maintains current fares for a lot of people while giving kind of giving everyone fair integration and not costing that much money, which is kind of exactly what we need. Why do you think American cities are obsessed with LRT? Honolulu Metro seems like the only metro built in decades. It is probably the only metro built in decades. The obsession is it's a combination of town planners selling it as kind of what Europe does, and it looks cool and looks nice. It's an overuse of a technology. It's a misunderstanding of what the technology is suited to, because LRT is suited to certain applications. And again, there will be a video out tomorrow, 9 a.m. Set a reminder. I'll be releasing it. It'll be on light rail. But there are certain places that make sense. Many in the U.S., I think it doesn't make sense, but it's still used. And so that's my thought. What do you think of the CTA's 7000 series rail cars? Not a fan. I think they look really old and dated. I'm quite disappointed with them, if it wasn't clear, because I just think they look so old, right? Like, it's the classic North American problem. And in this case, I'm going to have to say it's the classic American problem. Canada has been doing really well with getting modern trains that look new, right? Like, the new Toronto subway trains are our least new-looking trains, and they're also our oldest new trains. But the new Montreal trains, the new Vancouver trains, the new Calgary trains, even the new Ottawa trains, they all look really modern. And the U.S. has this problem with ordering really dated-looking rolling stock for rail lines. And same for the CTA 7000 series. Like, where's the full articulation? And why does the design look almost the exact same as the older models? Like, it doesn't need to. So that's my thoughts. It's a little harsh, I know, but tough love, right? Okay, lots of messages. Okay, so I'm probably going to have to kind of be a little selective here. So I'm going to, because there's a lot of messages. Thoughts on trackless trams? I think if you're talking about, I'm not sure if you're referring to like the silly Chinese like dotted line following tram bus thing. If you're talking about that, very silly. If you're talking about just trolleys, no, they make sense. Electric bus or trolley bus? I think that, again, join the Discord, because we had Jonathan English on the other day, and he said something really smart, which was that he thought that those should eventually become one technology, and I couldn't agree more. It's a great idea to have like trolley buses and electric buses become one technology, right? So a trolley bus just means an electric bus which is charging on wires. Interesting, especially considering Copenhagen did their electric bus trial several years ago, like around 6-7 years ago, and already have fleets and orders. Yeah, but I feel like a lot of places in Europe that were testing the technology early probably also took a lot more risk with it. And I think in North America, we're just more risk averse, right? Which makes sense, because we're not as heavily into transit, right? Which is the same. You can see, like, Toronto is more invested in transit than a lot of cities in North America, and Toronto is doing a more aggressive electric bus trial. So it makes sense. If you're spending a lot of money on on buses, then it makes sense to take a big risk to save money. If you're not, then why would you take a big risk that could cost you a bunch of money for saving money that there's not that much money for you to save? What cities in North America use dual-mode electric buses with catenary and battery systems? The only one I'm aware of right now is Dayton, Ohio, in like an in-service type of system. But other trolley buses do usually have batteries so they can operate off-wire for short periods of time. Yeah, I should also mention there are a few places in North America where entire towns use electric buses. It's just not widespread. Thoughts on transit in Miami? I had some videos a long time ago on transit in Miami. I think Miami is like a weird case. Like, there's a lot of potential. I think that, working on transit-oriented development and continuing to provide high-quality service will mean Miami has one of the best rail networks in the southern U.S., right? Brightline is a pretty cool system, and if it, continues and connects up to Disneyland and Tampa, that would be really awesome. I think Metro Rail is quite nice. I will say Metro Mover's a little weird, but the new Metro Rail trains look good. The connection to the airport is quite good, which is unique. That's not that common in North America. And so on the whole, yeah, Miami's pretty good for transit. That's pretty impressive. Yeah, Boston Silver Line is dual mode buses. That's a good point, and I should have remembered that. Thoughts on DC's plans to remove some regional bus parking in Union Station and reprioritize train right-of-way? Stated goal: reduce number of buses idling and valuable real estate. No, that sounds like good news. No, that sounds really good. It's something that Toronto has done as well with the new Union Station bus terminal, right? Has moved a lot of the idling away from the actual terminal, put it somewhere further away, and then have the terminal be just where passenger boarding goes on. Do you think the Shepherd line should expand eastward to Shepherd west? So that would be westward. If you're talking about westward, then yes, it should extend west to Shepherd west. Decades ago, there was a bus system in Congo that uses electric buses with flywheel energy storage. It did not turn out well. Interesting. Why don't you talk about cycle lanes as transit systems? There are cities which implement bike sharing systems close to metro and train stations and many cycle lanes as a complement. Dry throat. I don't. You're right. I probably should, but I think there are other channels that cover it more than me. Not Just Bikes is a good channel that covers that, though I do get a little irritated with the negativity that sometimes comes out of there, but he does good work on bike stuff, despite being called Not Just Bikes. I guess for me, I'm not a cyclist, and when I say I'm not a cyclist, I just mean I don't commute by bike, right? I know that he's made videos talking about how calling people cyclists in the Netherlands is kind of sacrilege, right? And I'm not someone who bikes, right? So I ride transit a lot, but I don't bike. So it'd be a bit odd for me to talk about it a ton. And also Toronto's not a great bike city. Like, Vancouver is a pretty good bike city, but it's hard to talk about it when there's not any good infrastructure. I think that, like, for example, in our Burquitlam station focus video, which if you haven't watched, I recommend you go watch it, we talked about bike parkades that they had there. Vancouver's pretty cool, good for that. Like, there's bike parkades at a lot of stations. Toronto's starting to do that, but, it's hard to talk about it when it doesn't exist. In Toronto, sucks for bikes. What can I say? It would surprise me if they're... Okay, this is just looking. Yeah, it's good to hear about RER, I agree. I'm very happy it's happening. After the 30 plus billion Doug Ford wants to invest in the GTA subway expansions, where should the next 30 billion be used to expand? So I think extend the Eglinton line. Yeah, just wearing headphones to look cool indeed. Extending the Eglinton line to Mississauga City Centre makes a lot of sense. I think doing the Mississauga, I cannot speak. The Mississauga City Centre loop that they were planning originally for light rail makes sense, so that should be done. Extend that line up to Brampton because it just makes sense to connect the GO line there. We've spent probably like 5 billion. Eglinton East with some smart grade separations for another 3-ish billion. Upgrade parts of the streetcar network to like light rail standards for 3 billion. We're at like 11 billion now. Extend Ontario line to Shepherd for 6 billion, so we're at 17 billion. Shepherd extension to Shepherd West for, let's say, 5 billion probably, right? So that puts us at 22 billion. I don't know if I want to extend the Shepherd line to Scarborough Town Centre, if I'm honest. I don't know how high of a priority that is. That would be, I guess that's one I would consider. Well, not to Scarborough Town Centre, but to Shepherd McCowan, where the Line 2 extension will go. I guess that would be next. Yeah, that would be how I would extend the network next, I think. Maybe leave a few billion and use it to spend on bus lanes and stuff. Sorry, SkyTrain or LRT. I used to be a big LRT fanboy, but I came around. Sorry, SkyTrain, definitely. I'm just curious, do you think there are existing or hypothetical projects where you feel LRT makes the most sense? Yes. I'll be making a video about this tomorrow, though not necessarily about specific projects, but that's something I can definitely talk about too in the future. The first electrified GO trains will use existing stock pulled by electric locomotives, but can the Bombardier bilevels be built to be self-propelled? No, like they're not currently designed to be, and I don't think they should be. And that's not necessarily the case. There could be electric multiple units before the electric locomotives happen. So yeah. Do you think any new subway lines will be proposed for Toronto in the near future? Will Toronto ever get to 500 stations like New York? I don't think any new subway lines are going to be proposed. I don't think there's really a huge need. Will we get to 500 stations someday? It depends. Like, if you count light rail stations and regional rail stations, yeah, probably. Metrolink's T logo was stolen from Boston. No, it wasn't. Again, go watch my video with Tobin Allison where we talk about this. There was like an original render where they used the T logo, but it's just a T. The T's are used in lots of cities. It's not, Boston does not own the letter T. Think Biden's infrastructure plan will invest in California high-speed rail, or is it dead? I would hope they invest. Like, I don't know. I talked about this in a previous stream. I don't know if I feel good about spending a ton of money on California high-speed rail because you could sink so much money into that project and waste a lot and not actually finish it. And if it's not going to be finished, I think that project has to be finished. You have to go from LA to San Francisco for it to be worth it. And if you can't for like 80 billion, which it seems like might be the problem, then it might actually not be worth the money because you could spend 80 billion doing a lot with transit. What do you think of the Stage Ontario line opening to Union Station first while tunnels are being bored? To Union Station first? I'm not sure what that's referring to. If you're talking about like running it down the rail corridor to Union, I don't think that's really feasible, right? Because you would have to still do a lot of pretty significant construction to get it to go to union. You know, you might be able to make the case for that if you already had electrified the rail network and the like, but I don't think it's really possible, right? Like, Ontario Line is automated, and you'd have to build a big station at Union, and you would have to spend a lot of money on signaling and electrification, etc. And it's just so much money to spend for only a couple years benefit, right? Because it seems like the downtown portion will be constructed first, right? Like, that's the bid that went out, the tender that went out first. And so I think that it's kind of a nice idea, but I don't think it would be all that practical. Could automated light metro work in certain parts of New York City? Why not, would be my answer. Of course it could. Yeah, it could work anywhere. The bi-levels are almost 50 years old. Don't you think it might be time? Yeah, time for a new design. Yeah, I agree. Bullseye. Like Danforth line to Queen first. I'm not sure what that's referring to. Several lines are ideal for automation and modernization. Yeah, definitely. I don't necessarily like the name Toronto Suburban Trains, because a lot of the service on Go RER doesn't need to be suburban. Thoughts on Link Light Rail? Vehicles are weird, especially the doors. Also, half of the stations are basically parking lots. I do like the pace of growth and how it's kind of S-Bahn-like. Link Light Rail is cool. I don't think the vehicles are weird. They're Siemens S70s, which are a very common light rail vehicle in North America. Well, they're not Siemens S70s. They will be S70s. They're kinky chariot vehicles right now that look like S70s. They're essentially S70s. It's a case, again, kind of like Eglinton, where why would you spend so much money on grade separation? It is one of the most expensive light rail projects in the world, Link Light Rail. You spend so much money, but you only get, X percent of the benefit because you don't go to full grade separation, which just seems silly. Like, you could add a few more grade separations and get way more benefit, which is what is weird to me. Contactless payment is not possible with the current Presto readers, correct? Which is why they're trialing it on Up Express first, because it has different readers. What features would you like to see for the new subway trains for Line 2? Glass doors, kind of like other modern train designs, like, full height windows. I think charging ports are nice. I think it is a bit of a gimmick if that's the only good feature your train has, but I think having a few charging ports is okay. I think substantially more longitudinal seating. I think better handholds. The current design on Line 1 really isn't very good. I would say potential for full automation would be a good thing to build in. I would say space for like bikes, potentially more doors, maybe better seat materials that aren't fabric. I don't like the fabric seats. Should Pearson Airport build the missing terminal? I'm not sure what you're referring to by that. Can you talk to us through your current desk chair? Talk us through your current desk chair or the one in the background. Which you recommend? This is my current desk chair from IKEA. It's utter garbage. It's truly terrible. I wouldn't recommend it. It has this kind of slider so I can lean back, right? And often it will come undone, and so I'll just be like kind of sitting, and then whoa, you fall, right? Terrible. So it's terrible. I wouldn't recommend it at all. It's truly just the cheapest chair possible. It destroys my back every day. Could I say anything worse about it? IKEA does make some okay products, and I have a lot of IKEA stuff, and everyone buys IKEA stuff, but especially for someone like me who sits so much, I really should invest in like a Herman Miller chair. I have one previously, not at the moment. This chair over here is an autonomous chair, which is so fancy, right? So nice and fancy. It was quite expensive, and I wouldn't recommend it either because it's some Alibaba like drop shipping company. I found out after we had bought this chair, of course. I mean, it's not like actually the worst chair in the world. Like, it's semi-comfortable and stuff, but it's not actually that high quality. And yeah, literally this is just a chair from Alibaba that they put a logo on and then they sell it, and I'm not super happy with that. I think it's kind of sketchy. So those are my thoughts. Okay, got a lot of messages. Let me scroll up here and then I will. Knowing how the disputes will go, it'll probably be cheaper to connect the Penn tunnels rather than build an entirely new bridge. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Is Mississauga getting any metro? No. How much longer are you going to be streaming today? Maybe like not 10 more minutes, roughly, I guess. I personally disagree. I like updating old styles better than the TTC's T1. I also like non-articulation better than articulated versions. Well, I mean, I think that's silly, right? Like, not updating the style because you like a retro design, I think it's bad because most people like modern designs. That's why most products move towards more modern designs, right? A lot of modern design is about making products better and more accessible. And so I think it's kind of a little inconsiderate to not support like modernizing designs because you have like an affinity for an old design, right? Like I like some old designs too, but I don't think that everyone should have to suffer through old designs because I like them. And also like articulation, right? Like that's something that trains should have because it increases capacity and safety and other things. And so I don't think we should just not have it because some people don't like it, right? I think it's important. Lots of discussions of rail tech. How about urban gondolas? Have you looked at those? Yes, I have. Simon Fraser University, not wearing my sweater, but where I was about to attend university is looking like they're going to install one in Vancouver, which is very cool. It's a 3S gondola, if you've heard of that. I meant that London, Ontario metro area is over 500,000 people, and it seems like the right size to start building bigger transit projects. I think light rail would be good. I don't know. The BRT is probably fine, and given the fact that London seemed like it was struggling to even get the BRT through, I think that light rail might be pushing it. I know you're a fan of light metros with elevated above road and cut and cover right of ways. What's your preferred routing for new suburban and regional lines? I think above medians is typically a good approach. I think that if you have a truly small urban area, then light rail can be looked into. And I think if you have a rail right of way, then you can really start looking at good light rail options. But I'll be talking about this more in my video tomorrow. Well, I think the thing with modernity and advancement in aesthetics, right, is that it often represents modernity in function, right? I don't think you can really disconnect them, right? Like part of the reason that a lot of the US trains look so dated is because of the crash regulations and stuff, right? And I think that once you remove those crash regulations, you would just go to a different design because they're better in other ways. So, yeah. Yeah, I could take up cycling, and I have, as you know, a young person, cycled a lot. But in Toronto, it's just too dangerous, right? Like, drivers here are actually crazy and super dangerous, and I wouldn't want to cycle here. It's the truth. The SkyTrain, I think, needs to have a line to Gastown. That would be the Hastings line. Opinions on Brampton's LRT tunnel. Right now, the short list of options is either a tunnel in mixed traffic or underground. It's a hard decision, eh? Mixed traffic or underground. I almost think mixed traffic might be a better option, right? Such a short tunnel. I guess if Brampton's paying for it, then give them the tunnel, right? Like I guess it is a slightly nicer connection for the long term. Boston's T logo was stolen from Stockholm. Where is he reading the questions from? The chat. Yep, the chat. Just by looking at the map of California high-speed rail, the indirect route sure looks like a compromise at best. Yeah, and SNCF offered to build the whole line for a significantly lower price by taking a more direct route, and they got turned down, and I just find that hilarious, right? Like, clearly that is a better option, because if you built a good high-speed rail option, there's no reason you couldn't build another line in the future. It shouldn't cost a ton to build through these fields in the middle of the Central Valley in California. Yeah, I'm slow at answering questions. I'll skip a few that are maybe less interesting or something along those lines. I'm not that far behind. Should the Raptors keeper trade Lowry? I honestly am not that into sports. I know that's probably heresy to say. Kyle Lowry was there for when they won the championship, so maybe we should keep him. Someone keeps asking about a missing terminal at Pearson. I'm not sure what they're referring to. A TTC live subway map would be cool. Yeah. I think Melbourne does have the benefit of having a good kind of a regional rail network, but it's at the expense of an urban rail network, which is why it's interesting. But I think Melbourne and Toronto are not all that different in total transit ridership, which shows the benefit of having a metro, right? You get a lot of ridership density. Should Winnipeg get a high floor grade separated LRT? Yeah, probably. The other prairie cities did, and I think it's probably appropriate. I remember when this channel was only 400 subscribers. Well, I do as well. Yeah, no one else should be subject to a Confederation line. I couldn't agree more. That is chef's kiss. Perfect, right? What's your opinion on the 319 bus being replaced with a BRT? We don't have any BRT really in Vancouver, so I don't have any strong opinions. I doubt it would happen. What do you think of the Ottawa airport connection plans? Well, there's not plans, right? It's being built. The airport rail link is being built right now. Do you think the platform edge doors, like in London, could ever come to Line 1 or potentially other lines in Toronto? Definitely. They've considered it more than once. It's a good idea. Is it a good idea to reactivate and expand the Vancouver Heritage Streetcar? Not as a heritage streetcar, otherwise it's only going to be for tourists, right? Are you going to do an urban gondola video? I might. We'll see what happens with that. I think this is probably the end of the stream. I've gone through all the questions for today. The next stream will be linked in the description. There's a few more coming in, and I'll probably answer these, but there's a link to next week's, or not next week's, the next stream, which is in 2 weeks. We do a stream every 2 weeks, and in between we do videos. There will be a link in the description for that. There will also be a link in the description for the Google form where you can send us transit maps, which I could consider putting on my wall. Maybe we'll have a vote or something, as well as fare cards and other unique stuff. In addition, I should plug my social media. Go follow me on Twitter at rmtransit. On Instagram, also should be at rmtransit, though you can verify on my YouTube channel. Consider supporting us on Patreon. It's much appreciated, and you get early access to videos, which I think is pretty fun. And join our Discord to have conversations, etc. with us. Let me answer a few more questions, and then I'm going to end the stream for today. Do you prefer a zone system or single fare for transit? I prefer pure distance-based, I think. I think it's the best system. Could you do the Expo Line Hastings Line extension cut and cover, or would it need a tunnel? Well, cut and cover is a tunnel, right? So I think you probably would need a tunnel. I think that's it for today, because no more questions. Thanks everyone for coming, and yeah, it's been great. I'll see everyone in 2 weeks. Thank you. Bye.